I'm interested to hear, like, what you've heard from your customers, sort of what emotions drove them to want to buy. Like, was it emotions that you planted, or was it emotions you tapped into? And sort of what is the emotional trigger for most people?
I think it's super important to lead with emotion, aesthetics, connection, community. And that's really our focus with our brand storytelling.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Today, I'm happy to have Chung with me because she's the CEO and founder of Senreve, which is primarily a handbag company. And I'd love for Coral to start by sort of giving us the origin story of what the catalyst was that had her decide that she needed to start this particular company.
Sounds good. Great to be here, Kevin. Very excited for our conversation. So Senreve really started as something that I think I personally felt a pain point around. I could never find that perfect luxury bag that fit my lifestyle. And as a multifaceted person who was traveling and was also a young mom, I really wanted something that was beautiful and luxurious and fit my style and aesthetic and was luxurious and high quality, but also at the same time could fit a laptop and keep me organized. And I wanted to feel secure and wanted to wear the bag in many different ways because I wanted it to work for me from day to night with all the different things happening in my life. And so I just felt like there was a big gap in the market, and there was no brand that was speaking to me either. And there was also a market opportunity to start a digitally native brand. And so all of these things came together. And that's when I started Senreve, and we launched about 6 years ago.
Cool. Well, that's a great story. It's interesting. I always sort of considered handbags as being more similar to women's shoes as it relates to they're very sort of scenario specific. But you described that you wanted to create a brand that sort of worked through multiple different scenarios, as in going to work and then maybe going out after work, and who knows, maybe even going out after that. And so that seems to be quite different from the handbags that one would typically see walking into Bloomingdale's or Macy's or somewhere like that. And do you feel like that's been the big differentiator for you?
I feel that we have several differentiators, which from a product perspective, we've actually innovated quite a bit. And we have some patented products because the design is so unique and new. But yes, one of the thesis behind Senreve is this idea that you live a very multifaceted lifestyle. And so you want to have something that transitions really well. And it's funny that you should say that bags are kind of like shoes for women. But in fact, I think about almost your bag is your home away from home. It's almost more like your car in many ways.
Right.
And so you just have it with you throughout your day. Most women or people who are really busy don't have time to keep swapping in and out of different bags. And that creates a lot of frustration sometimes when you leave your keys in your other bag or things like this. And that certainly happened to me. So yes, my idea is that you could dress our bags up or down. You could simply swap out a chain to really elevate the look. For example, I've taken the Aria belt bag, which is one of our best-selling bags, on a hike, but I also wore it to a wedding or to a black tie gala. It's really very versatile. So that is a huge part of our value proposition and differentiation point. And the other point is that we really produce very high quality products in Italy, in Europe, where most of the partners that we work with produce products for major luxury brands. And so we're able to sell it at a more accessible price point because we're a direct to consumer and digitally native. And so there's a lot of value given back to the consumer and our community, which I think everyone really appreciates.
That's great. And I love the versatility element of it because it sort of allows you to justify not a value price point, which would be too low for you, but something above that, but not necessarily sort of up in the stratosphere where some of the brands play, where they're a single use bag, but for just luxury occasions. So I think you found really an untapped middle there.
Yes, that was part of the thesis as well. I saw that in the market, there was an interesting white space in the price point that we cover, which is around $500 to $1,000, which is premium, certainly more premium and higher position than some of the mass luxury brands. But we don't have any issues with regards to like head-to-head price competition with the more traditional established brands.
So I really loved your logo. And so I'd love to hear the story behind the logo, because when I sort of read your history and I looked at the logo, I sort of thought about a woman who's so busy that they almost need eight hands, right, to keep their lives in order. And I wasn't sure if that was the catalyst or if there was some other backstory to the logo.
Yeah, that's definitely right on point. So Senreve means sense and dream. It's derived from the French words for sense and dream. And it's really about dichotomies coexisting and about this idea that you could have something that is your fantasy and, very dreamy, as well as something that's sensible and, for the everyday. And so our Octopi logo, Mark, is really this idea that an individual wears many hats, sometimes is juggling a lot of different things. And so it really translates into our products as well, because we really think about how do we make our products hands-free, so you can be, in action all the time. Right. So that's how we developed it. And it was a really fun concept, because also it looks a little bit like the back of someone. It looks like someone's hair also.
Oh, that's cool.
So there's like a few interpretations, but we really love the octopi symbol, and the octopi as a creature is also a very inspiring creature, very highly intelligent, very, mysterious, that has a lot of depth. And, there's a lot of interesting qualities about it that we find to be very relevant to Senreve as a brand, and then also to our octopi community. So that's, we kind of call all the members of our community octopi. So it's a really fun thing that we've developed over the years.
Yeah, that's really cool. I always consider, once you get into the sort of semi-premium and premium level price points for fashion, I always consider it sort of an emotional sale more than a functional sale, although you do sort of bridge function as well. So I'm interested to hear, like, what you've heard from your customers, sort of what emotions drove them to want to buy. Like, was it emotions that you planted, or was it emotions that you tapped into? And sort of what is the emotional trigger for most people?
I think it's super important to lead with emotion, aesthetics, connection, community. And that's really our focus with our brand storytelling, with building the octopi community, with engaging with our community. That's one of the big benefits and a huge reason why Senreve is direct to consumer, is so we can have that engagement and dialogue. And I think that is really something that people appreciate. I think we do bring in more of this idea of versatility, functionality, usability, and that's a big reason why people continue to come back to us, because they love their Senreve products so much. We get comments like, I used to buy these luxury brands, but they're all put away in my closet now because I just use my Senreve bag all the time. You really thought about every single thing, all the details. You could tell that it was very carefully designed by someone who understands me. And that's really what we want to have translate. And I always greatly appreciate that when I speak to people who are Senreve fans or Octopi Club members or people who I meet at different events virtually or in the life that we host, they're able to speak about Senreve as intelligently and as fervently as me. And that really is super exciting. I think that's one of the reasons why I really get up every day, super excited to be leading this company.
That's really fascinating because, you mentioned the community of the octopi, and it's unusual for brands to get that level of community. Obviously, there are some brands that do, and some go so far as to like Harley Davidson, where people are tattooing brands on themselves, or I have a Jeep Wrangler. And so if you drive a Jeep Wrangler, people will do the Jeep wave to you as you're driving down the street. And unless you don't, once you get a Jeep Wrangler, you realize everybody's giving me the Jeep wave. So like there's this tribalism around the brand in that case. And it sounds like from the way you're describing it that, there's a bit of that same community that you've generated. And do you have stories about people who sort of meet each other on the street who are fellow octopi and who that becomes the bond that they immediately have?
Yeah, definitely. It's a wonderful conversation starter. I remember in the early days of Senreve, very early days, maybe a few months after we launched, two things that just I still remember to this day that I feel like gave me this feeling of, wow, this is something that is really making an impact and it has so much potential. One was there was a conference event in the finance world, and several women executives who were speaking at this conference were on the same panel. And something like 3 of the 5 panelists had a Senreve Maestro bag. And they were all talking about how they heard about the brand and what they like about it. Do they wear it as a backpack or do they wear it as a crossbody? Do they put their laptop in the bag in the sleeve or in the middle? And that was a really special moment. And then the other special moment was a friend of mine told me he was flying from San Francisco to Sao Paulo for a business trip. And he noticed that in the business class, there were several women with Senreve bags. And he started asking them about it. They were all super excited, to share. And so I thought that was really special as well. And again, this was just, a few months, less than 6 months after we launched. And so I felt like, wow, we've really struck a chord. And I think, if we can continue to grow from this place, it'll be a very exciting adventure.
That's really cool. That's excellent. That's a great story. I think one of the things that fashion brands either are able to pull off or aren't able to pull off is to sort of end up positioning themselves either on purpose or by accident as timeless fashion brands, right? Where you sort of don't have to worry about the fact like, oh, this is last season's bag, and so I should be embarrassed to use it. So how have you thought through that process of trying to position yourself as something timeless and utilitarian, but still very fashionable? Like, how do you bridge that?
Well, interestingly enough, in the handbag category, there's a lot of precedence for it bags and really breakthrough bags that can stand the test of time.
Right.
So, whether it's the Hermes Birkin or the Chanel boy bag, or, I could rattle off many, but 10 years ago is relevant, 20 years ago is relevant, and it's still just as relevant and exciting today. So there's something particular about this category that lends itself to that timelessness. So that for sure is something that we understand very well at Senreve. So before we launched, we really focused on thinking about what are the characteristics of creating this it bag. It needs to have certain iconic elements from a design perspective. And we're not very logo forward. So we really focus on materials, details. We have a very subtle logo on the side of the bag, which is a unique placement for a logo, but just little characteristics, certain types of hardware, like we have feet on the bottoms of our bags. And that's something that's very specific to us. We have a really exciting and beautiful, feminine, saturated color palette that I think people associate with us. So we think about, what are some of these things that really make it timeless, but also relevant. And then, of course, the other benefit of us being a direct-to-consumer brand is we've really made a lot of improvements and modifications to our products. They're not always visible, but we're constantly making different iterations of it. It's almost like thinking about it like it's the iPhone, right? So we're probably on our 8th generation of the Maestro bag. And so there's an opportunity to gather feedback, to have a dialogue and continue to evolve, which is really special and different as well.
That's cool. Have you found that certain products have sort of a geographic popularity where either by urban versus suburban or East Coast, West Coast, or any other sort of really fascinating preferences that your customers have expressed?
For sure. It's really interesting. We see, for example, in New York City, the Maestro bag is super popular. It's a great bag for people who are on the go, commuting, taking public transportation, taking the subway, etc. In LA, we see, the Aria bag really popular. It's a belt bag, but it can be worn as a sling and a crossbody. And the doctor bag is really popular. So I think in LA, people drive more. And so the doctor bag is great, for that. It's a nice carry-all. So definitely there are some differences. In Asia, for example, we see that our more petite silhouettes are very relevant. For example, the Aluna bag, which is a really petite convertible backpack, but it's perfect for petite women with a smaller frame. We also see a lot of color preferences that are different. Definitely black in New York, the most popular color. In San Francisco, it's a lot of neutral colors like browns and tans. So it's really fun. There's a lot of personality by geography that comes through.
Yeah, I think that's a great lesson for marketers who tend to sometimes think about their personas as more, one size fits all. And clearly there are going to be different personas in geography, sometimes as a way to identify the different personas. So I think that's probably, even outside of the fashion world, marketers should probably think about their audiences, their target audiences, not as homogeneous, but potentially these different segments that have slightly different preferences.
Mm-hmm. And definitely, regions with warmer weather, like, for example, we have quite a presence in Asia, like in Hong Kong and Singapore, so they don't have the winter season, right? And so I think throughout the year, they like pastels and lighter colors. So it's a lot of interesting dynamics that we see. And I completely agree with you. I think one of the key things that we try to do is make the experience as personalized as possible. So that requires a lot of thoughtfulness and segmentation and being able to really think about the person that you're speaking to as an individual, as opposed to like a mass.
Yeah, I had a conversation with my wife about bags, and the one of the things that came up with her was this idea about form versus function, right? And so you have this idea that there's some bags which look really great but are completely useless, and then there are the other ones that are really useful but look horrible. And so I'm curious what your design process has been with you and the designers about how do you go through that? Like, which comes first? Is it function comes first and then you figure out how to make it look great, or is it design comes first, or is it really a back and forth balance?
It's a delicate balance. Yeah. And what she identified as a frustration was something that I identified as well. And I feel like it's very unfortunate that we have to feel like we need to make this trade-off. And so that is really what Senreve is solving for. We want to make it so that you don't have to make this trade-off, that you could feel proud to carry a beautiful bag that's also meeting your needs.
Right.
So I guess I could give you an example. Our process is really, we call it art meets science. So it's a lot of data and analytics, but it's really combined with intuition and artistry and creativity. And so that's why I personally work very closely with our partners in Italy who are amazing artisans. And in fact, I was just in Florence, and we made a lot of amazing progress with next year's new products. But I'll give you an example. Actually, my background is the Cadence bag. As you can see, we launched this at the beginning of last year, and it's been an amazing bag that had a tremendous wait list and has done incredibly well. And it's a beautiful bag, as you can see, right? All of the details are beautiful, the proportions, the hardware, and that's super critical. And we use really high quality materials, both inside and outside. But at the same time, we have amazing, functionality, capacity. It looks like a not so big bag, but it can fit so much. And it has multiple compartments and secret pockets and places where you could put your phone. And, so we really thought about all of these use cases, and the strap is really versatile. So you can wear it as a short shoulder bag or as a long crossbody. So that's really how we think about it. We don't ever want to sacrifice form for function. We don't want to sacrifice function for form. And it's this delicate balance. Sometimes it's a battle. So internally, we sometimes have some conflict around it, but eventually it gets resolved, and that gets presented in a beautiful way.
Yeah, well, clearly you've been able to demonstrate that you've got that balance perfect on a lot of your products. So congratulations on that. I think a lot of brands outside of the fashion industry are sort of jealous of the fashion industry, and perhaps yourselves in particular, as it relates to being able to get influencers and celebrities, using your product, or, and having it be visible in pictures and sometimes Instagrammed out or put in a TikTok or whatever. So is there anything that they can learn from the fashion industry with regards to potentially tapping into that influencer, ecosystem, or the celebrity ecosystem, in a way that they don't have to necessarily pull their checkbook out?
Well, I think first and foremost, you have to create a product that is really relevant and visually stunning. I think a lot of fashion products lends itself to that criteria more than,
right,
maybe a CPG product or a food product or something like this. But, in many ways, celebrities and influencers are just like us, as they say. Right. So we've had, actually, in the early days of Senreve, some funny stories around some major celebrities actually being on our wait list, and really frustrated that they were still like, I've been waiting for a really long time. So it's really funny because our team, at the time we were a really small team, and we would be like, oh, is that really her? Or is it someone with a similar name? And it was so funny. So yeah, that happened a lot for us. I think celebrities are also multifaceted women who are moms, who are, in many ways, they embody this Senreve woman's lifestyle of having to travel, having a lot of obligations and events. And a lot of them use the Maestro bag as their kind of like workhorse. I mean, like Angelina Jolie uses our tote all the time. Like, she was in London with our tote. I think she dropped off her kid at college with our tote. And it's just this amazing carry-all that keeps her organized, and she just likes it. And it doesn't have a ton of logos on it. And it's not so ostentatious, I think. Right. And so I think they derive some comfort from that as well. But at the same time, it's still very stylish, and, they're glamorous, right? And so right. It fits with their overall look, and is not in conflict with their overall aesthetic. So I would say those are some of the important characteristics. I also think that our brand story, a lot of celebrities and influencers resonate with. Obviously a female founded and led company, and we're, a newer brand. And so I think they feel great about supporting a company like that, versus a more anonymous, major brand.
Yeah, well, congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
And as somebody who runs a nonprofit that supports other nonprofits, I want to thank you for your philanthropic edge to your persona. You've been active in supporting the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, and I found on your profile Dancers Workshop JH. So I'd love to hear, like, how you decided, which nonprofits are you going to support in your efforts. And sort of how you balance that.
Yeah, that has always been a core part of Senreve's identity and my identity in terms of giving back. As a company, we have donated significantly to various charities that work with, women's issues, women's health, breast cancer awareness, women's education, Dress for Success, a lot of these organizations and nonprofits that empower women, empower children, empower girls. And I think that's very aligned with our overall value of empowerment. That's a huge focus for Senreve. And for myself personally, I really like to think about my charitable giving in kind of 3 different areas: the arts, education, and kind of, not necessarily the particular arena that I'm familiar with or super involved with, but I'm close to someone who is leading this nonprofit, or I have a relationship with someone who is really passionate that I've just been very impressed by, right? So that's kind of how I think about it. And I feel like, Dancers Workshop in Jackson Hole kind of fits both of those criteria. There's an amazing leader there who I just believe in, and she has a tremendous vision. And she really also makes a big positive impact on the community, on the students there. And I think it's incredible with the limited resources, what she's done. So I'm very passionate about that. I have been living in Jackson Hole, and I feel very passionate about this community. And I feel like, especially with a community like this, it's more of a small town, and I think every individual can make a big impact. So yeah.
Great. Well, it's great to see that. Final question is really just about there's a lot of evolution continuing within the social media ecosystem in particular, and within the marketing system more generally. So I'm just curious if there's anything sort of happening now that is super exciting for you, and that sort of you think you'll tap into more over the next year.
Yes, there's been a lot of change as always. And I think one thing that we really focus on is having a very diverse way to speak to our community. And so we're not overly reliant on a single platform, where if there's an algorithm change or some structural change, that it really creates this massive, shockwave. We're fortunate to have a great and very strong organic community. I think we really lead with that. We lead with loyalty, and we track Net Promoter Score very vigorously. We're very focused on driving that, connectivity. So that's super important. We've recently introduced a loyalty program, and we want to continue to grow those organic channels. But in terms of social media, there's always a lot of fun things going on. We have a couple of collaborations in the works. We have some really fun content coming out. We definitely noticed, and people have given us a lot of feedback, that they're always wanting to engage more with myself, with our team. So we're focused on doing a lot more behind the scenes, kind of revealing some of the secrets of Senreve, or how a bag is made. And so, again, I was just in Italy, in Florence, working with our partners there and working with some amazing artisans. And so we have some really fun behind the scenes footage that we'll be sharing. So I think from our perspective, we're always focused on delivering content that people find interesting, relevant, they're curious about, or they derive inspiration, or it just amuses them. One of our brand pillars is wit. And so we don't want to take ourselves too seriously. It's always playful. And we want someone to, feel delighted by what they see from Senreve.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I've always been shocked at how interested people are in the sort of what would have been called B-roll, right? So the background, the behind the scenes stuff. And, once you start chronicling that, that becomes sometimes more of the story than the main story. They want the backstory. They don't want the main story. And so now of course you have to plan out photo shoots just as much on what's in the B-roll as what's in the main shot, right? So it is really fascinating, and I've noticed that particularly over the last 5 years, there seems to be this fascination with the behind-the-scenes story. And I don't know if it's like reality TV has driven that, or what the catalyst has been. But we've certainly seen that with a bunch of our clients and their brands, that we can't forget to shoot the B-roll. Like the B-roll is perhaps more important than the
it's
A-roll.
fun. I think it's funny. It's more casual. It feels more relatable.
Yeah.
And I think it really provokes like this dialogue almost.
Yeah.
So it's, for us, it's very much aligned with our brand values. I think certain brands want to be more distant and anonymous.
Right.
But I do feel like we have a very authentic brand in that way. Myself, our team, we are all users of our product. We are all living the brand from a consumer's perspective as well. And so I think it's extremely relatable and connecting.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that. I think this is all great stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have coming out now over the next few months to the next year. Sounds
well,
like
definitely keep an eye out for some fun holiday gifts for your wife.
Absolutely. And I even got a direct mail piece from you recently, which was sort of surprising. I mean, I happen to have an entire division doing direct mail because it started working really well over the pandemic when everyone was locked up. They were excited to see the postal carrier arrive because they usually were bringing gifts from Amazon or from wherever, right? Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden, direct mail started working, less so on the B2B side, although you can still make it work in B2B, but B2C, direct mail was really overperforming, and it's become an important staple for us. So I'm at my Manhattan office today, but I do at home have the postcard that I saved from your team.
Yeah, somehow we identified you as
I don't know.
Right. Well,
it's probably my neighborhood being Scarsdale. I've been we're in the wealth demographic.
That is a key neighborhood for us.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You're in the right zip code.
Sometimes it's all about the zip code. That's a marketing lesson there, right, as well.
Yes.
Well, Coral, thanks so much for joining me for the podcast, and I look forward to watching your brand evolve.
Thank you so much. Great speaking with you.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.